It was on one summer day in Houston when Rick Rubin found himself on the streets of the city's Fifth Ward, where he had learned was the home base of a group that was building quite an audience locally. Just the year before, this group, Geto Boys, had released their sophomore album, Grip It on That Other Level, which had reportedly sold more than 500,000 copies. Spectacular for a ragtag outfit from a small and new independent record label. Rubin had an independent record label himself, Def American Recordings Incorporated, which was actually about 2 years younger than the Geto Boys' home, Rap A Lot Records. But the age of Def American belied the much longer and accomplished resume of Rubin compared to Rap A Lot founder Jay Prince. A neophyte he wasn't. Rubin had actually co-founded the soon-to-be legendary Def Jam Records with Russell Simmons back in 1984, and he had single-handedly produced Radio, the 1985 debut album that set LL Cool J on the path of being hip-hop's first solo superstar. In addition, Rubin co-produced Run DMC's magnum opus, 1986's Raising Hell, and his scouting efforts were primarily responsible for introducing Public Enemy and the Beastie Boys to Def Jam, and, by extension, the world. With Def Jam in great shape, Rubin nevertheless left in 1988, swapping the concrete jungle of New York with the palm trees of Los Angeles to found Def American, where he delved further into his heavy metal and hard rock beginnings, as evidenced by the first signees to his label. It's hard to argue against Rubin's interest in hip-hop waning by the end of the 80s. Still, his enamorment with the recent Geto Boys album led him to the Fifth Ward, where an upstart label was eager for nationwide distribution. Rap-A-Lot's previous venture, with A&M Records, famed for being the home of Janet Jackson, hadn't worked out. Just like Michael's baby sister, A&M had wanted Rap-A-Lot's artists to go pop. 3 problems, though. 1. Only one of the 4 acts signed to Rap-A-Lot got an A&M deal. Raheem, who happened to be a former Geto Boy. 2. His resultant album, 1988's The Vigilante, didn't pop, pun intended. And 3. The commercial failure of Raheem's album was only exacerbated by his outburst at a record company function, with A&M deeming his behavior egregious enough to drop him, and Rap-A-Lot. So, here was Rap-A-Lot's second shot, embodied in a long-haired guy from New York that looked like an indie rock band member. And Rubin certainly did not come across as a guy who felt that rappers needed to have a squeaky clean image to sell millions of records. After all, look at the Beastie Boys. Sure, they were white, but their black counterparts, such as NWA and the 2 Live Crew, who were even more outrageous than Ad Rock, MCA, and Mike D could ever be, didn't seem to have any problems pushing millions of units either. Rubin's proposition seemed entrancing. Def American would adopt the already superb Grip It album, and Rubin, as production supervisor, would oversee its re-recording, remixing, and engineering for a wider distribution. Since 1988, Def American had enjoyed a distribution deal with Geffen Records, which was part of the distribution arm of Time Warner's Warner Music Group, then known as WEA, an acronym for the merger of Warner Brothers Records, Elektra Records, and Atlantic Records. Geffen fell under Warner Brothers. And oh, the group would lose the H and one of the T's from the word ghetto. A bit more marketable and totally stupid Def. The new Geto Boys album, simply named The Geto Boys, as though it was their first LP, but definitely billed as a wider introduction of Rap-A-Lot's most successful act, was initially supposed to be released on August 28, 1990. Sometime in July, the finished album was sent over to Sony Digital Audio Disc Corporation, a manufacturing plant based in Terre Haute, Indiana, to press its compact discs. The thought of a factory's quality control staff in Middle America, read white, listening to the vulgar lyrics of a rap group was still novel at a time when a ubiquitous TV channel like MTV still struggled to play music videos from black artists, let alone rap artists. This ain't no Bruce Springsteen, that's for sure. Sony DADC rejected the Geto Boys album, which had WEA resort to manufacturing copies themselves using a plant owned by Time Warner. But perhaps the seeds of doubt had already been sown by the DADC rejection. Or, secondarily, Geffen Records, which had refused to renew its distribution pact with Time Warner back in March in favor of a new deal with MCA, didn't want to inherit any more headaches. According to its namesake founder, David Geffen, Time Warner was $12 billion in debt. Plus, criticism of explicit lyrics in rap music, most especially from NWA and the Two Live Crew, ironically, the latter was being distributed by the A arm of WEA, was ramping up. And while the former was primarily notorious for violent lyrics and the latter was notorious for misogynistic lyrics, the Ghetto Boys combined both. Even rap-friendly record labels spoke out against the motley crew from Houston. Ultimately, on the eve of the Geto Boys release date, after promotional 12-inch vinyl and cassette singles for the re-release of Do It Like a Geo, as well as a music video, the group's first, Geffen Records pulled the plug on its deal with Def American, citing that the record glamorizes and possibly endorses violence, racism, and misogyny as the reason. Rick Rubin and the Geto Boys were beyond disappointed, and both parties claimed a racial double standard regarding musical artistry in the United States. Bushwick Bill memorably had some choice words for their termination. Geffen Records countered that sentiment by pointing out that it had removed its own logo from recent releases from metal band Slayer and stand-up comedian Andrew Dice Clay, among others, and arguing that the Geto Boys pushed down the level of decency further than either aforementioned act. Either way, onward Rick and co trudged. After foregoing record labels who either gave him the thumbs down or would only accept the Geto Boys if he also gave up the rest of his roster, who put out records like this, and made jokes like this.
Jack Sprat could eat no fat, his wife could eat no lean. So Jack ignored the flappy tits and licked the so clean. Oh!
Rubin made the bold choice of going directly to the head of WEA distribution, a step up from where Geffen Records once was, and the distribution chief, Henry Dross, relented. Working with Rubin to re-record and remix the Geto Boys project was Brendan O'Brien, who was already a notable sound engineer within hard rock circles and was destined to work with Rubin again on the Red Hot Chili Peppers' most successful album, 1991's Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic, a landmark for the rise of alternative rock in the 90s. With the backing of a new distributor, as well as twin pillars of rap and rock heritage, a new date for the Geto Boys record was set for September 21st, 1990. Fittingly enough, the album cover depicts each member placed in a square mugshot backdrop, holding up a signboard, a subversive flip of the Beatles' Let It Be layout. Any traces of dejection that the Geto Boys might have lingered at the time of retooling Grip It for a nationwide release must have been funneled into the album's opener. F*** 'em. The hard rock influences here, the Bomb Squad-esque collage of samples tied together by an Isaac Hayes melody loop, producing a sustained blast of heat, giving the feeling of a hot atmosphere that is not cooling off anytime soon. It's the perfect sonic mood for the quartet of Houstonites, who are infuriated with the huge amount of scrutiny and roadblocks they'd had to face.
We ain't kiss no damn to be accepted. And if you're waiting on that to happen, sucker, you'll be a waiting motherfucker.
Willie D in particular gets extra space in this track, probably feeling more heat than the rest of the crew. His solo effort, Controversy, had finally come out the past December, 9 months after Grip It, thereby guaranteeing that he was going to receive up to double the amount of questioning of his morality compass and musical merit, or lack thereof.
Sending letters and talking about how they hate the album Controversy, they're rebelling. I don't give a cause the shit's still selling.
So, the Geto Boys are thankful for anyone who backs their artistic stance, but it's a brief calm in the midst of a day-long storm. Ultimately, F*** 'em is the first major middle finger song in rap history.
Thumbs up to those who down with us. For you other motherfuckers in the atmosphere, I'm saying f*** you loud and clear.
And of course, we can't forget the inclusion of a sampling and a DJ Ready Red interpolation of a scene in the Geto Boys' favorite cinematic inspiration, Scarface. Tony Montana, now the group's fifth member in absentia, is fed up with his boss Frank Lopez and his timid approach toward his cocaine business, and Tony's desire to finally break off on his own climaxes with a sudden outburst in response to Frank's displeasure at Tony's ambitious deal with Colombia-based Alejandro Sosa and his failure, deliberate or not, to stop Sosa from executing Frank's right-hand man, Omar Suarez, for being an informant.
Gaspar Gomez and the Diaz brothers. I buried those cockroaches.
Talk about daring. Montana's mindset is the ethos of the Geto Boys. New tracks are going to bookend the self-titled LP to reinforce its new and optimal sheen for an audience beyond parts of the South and Midwest, where the group's music was most dominant. But the question was, and probably still is, this: was a so-called remix album really necessary when there was already a solid project that could be re-released with a major label push? Well, let's start with the lineup. 10 out of 12 tracks were plucked from Grip It on that other level. Wise choice. Seek and Destroy and No Sellouts were left off the remix project for great reasons. The former felt like a vestige of East Coast imitation and consequently an oddity in an LP brimming with Southern audacity, and the latter was too sonically rough to polish for a wider release. And it was arguably Grip It's weakest cut. Rubin was able to salvage one song from Making Trouble, which seems to come from a whole different group altogether, and offered too little to recommend it. So, after the opening brand new track, Size Ain't Shit is next, thereby making Bushwick Bill the first Geto Boys member to get his solo shine on the record. In a way, it's an odd choice. Bill possessed neither the strongest rhyming talent nor the most powerful presence of the three MCs. But perhaps this was Rubin trying to introduce some sort of equilibrium. Notable for his much smaller size and shorter stature, Bushwick Bill was nevertheless game for a beatdown for his naysayers and pipe down for the ladies, just like any ghetto-bred normal-sized male. The placement right after the furnace heat that's him is welcome comic relief, thereby making it sequential gold. Plus, the sonics are beefed up a bit. If there's any Geto Boys song that garnered the most attention from the public by 1990, it was Mind of a Lunatic, so brazen in its depiction of gore and murder that it had Rick Rubin all but name the group the pioneers of what he termed horror rap, later to be known as horrorcore. The improvements made on the song are immense. First, there's the eschewing of a fade-out for the previous song, Size Ain't Shit, in favor of a loop with Mind of a Lunatic for a more dramatic transition between songs. And while the music is left alone, outside of a bit of EQing for a marginally more robust sound, there are now 6 verses instead of 5, 2 for each member, with each line delivered with a ferocity unmatched by the original. Bill is up first, adding more disturbing detail. The OG version has him sexually assault a woman before killing her. The GB version has him going further.
Had sex with her corpse before I left her, and drew my name on the wall like Helter Skelter.
Scarface was the weak link in the OG version, his stilted, pre-rendered rhyme scheme exacerbated by him being the only one with a lone verse. Here, he gets 2 verses to reinvent himself in one of the Geto Boys' greatest songs, kicking off with a couplet that presaged the unsurpassed level of psychosis he would explore in his later work, both as a solo artist and as a group member.
I sit alone in my four-cornered room staring at candles, dreaming of the people I've dismantled. Like I said before, Scarface is my identity, a homicidal maniac with suicidal tendency.
But it's Willie D who steals the show, with a booming voice and verbal tenacity that makes him the equivalent of Ice Cube with NWA. He rewrites bars 5 to 16 in his first of 2 verses, injecting more resonance into his performance.
Cross the line, your ass is mine. I don't give a if you're 9 or 99. Blind, cripple or crazy, don't faze me. Your funky ass will be pushing up daisies.
Yup, necrophilia, pitbull-like rage, and Charles Manson. The Geto Boys are even more deranged lunatics this time around. Just like Size Ain't Shit with Mind of a Lunatic, the latter is looped with Gangsta of Love, making for another exciting transition. Once again, Rubin provides improvements. The 3 MCs are more interconnected with their verses of raw, graphic, and comically delivered sex tales in the GB version. There's also a single point of heightened authenticity. In the OG version, there's this couplet,
But I sensed it in the making, talking about she praying for me and that Jamaican.
which is re-recorded with the patois inflection of Bushwick Bill, an actual person of Jamaican descent.
But I sensed it in the making,
So, there's a higher level of group-like chemistry in Gangsta of Love GB. But there was one problem. First pressings of the Geto Boys LP retained its main sample of the Steve Miller Band's The Joker. But then Steve Miller himself was made aware of its use in the just-released eponymous album. As a result, Miller and his record label, Capitol Records, sued Def American. A settlement of $50,000 and the promise that the album would be deleted was enough to appease the plaintiffs. When the album returned to shelves nationwide as a reissue, The Joker had been replaced by Leonard Skinner's 1974 smash hit, Sweet Home Alabama, for the body of the song, backed by a thunderous, earth-rattling beat and Chicago gangsters' gangster boogie in the hook.
Gangsta boogie, gangsta boogie, gangsta boogie, gangsta boogie.
Fans for decades afterwards would derisively refer to this iteration as the Gangsta Boogie version, coincidentally sharing its acronym with the name of the album where it lives. Granted, from a strictly mixing and engineering aspect, Gangsta of Love GB is the superior offering, but listeners who were emotionally attached to the OG version with its bluesy atmosphere enhancing the comically ribald lyrics never quite warmed up to an iteration forced upon them because of a sample clearance issue. Plus, Sweet Home Alabama was too familiar of a sampling source. It was already a country rock classic, for goodness sake. The album's first pressing combined the strengths of both versions, and that's why, consequently, Gangster of Love is the biggest miss of the Geto Boys LP. Trigger Happy is up next, with its original 4 verses pared down to 3. The OG version had Scarface start off with 2 verses, with Bushwick Bill and Willie D taking charge of the other half. Again, Rubin, an advocate for optimizing the Geto Boys as a unit, brings Bill to the fore, deletes the weaker of Scarface's 2 verses and moves him to the rear, and places Willie D in the middle. Due to its cleaner edit, more conventional format, and bolstered mixing, the GB version edges out the OG version of Trigger Happy. Life in the Fast Lane, a solo cut that finds Scarface detailing yet agonizing over his success in the dope game, gets an update to its countrified aura from the harmonica and guitar of Hot Pants by the Soul Brothers Incorporated. The drums are beefed up with the addition of Billy Squires' aptly titled The Big Beat. Necessary? Hardly, but it's an acceptable enhancement. Assassins, the lone offering from Making Trouble, is updated with a little more speed, a more aggressive 808 boom, and a few more cuts and scratches. Consequently, the OG version is obliterated by the version offered by Willie D, Scarface, and Bushwick Bill, a song that covers graphic murder in a way that would probably make Leatherface green with envy, needs convincing delivery, and previous Geto Boys frontman Prince Johnny C didn't get the job done. For instance, compare the rendition of this couplet by Johnny C.
I said I want your money grubbing all I can sell. I looked into her eyes and she was scared as hell.
With that of Willie D.
I said I want your money grubbing all I can sell. I looked into her eyes and she was scared as hell.
Plus, in the GB version, there's no disclaimer at the end.
You just was bugging, you know what I'm saying?
You sure were, Johnny. Do It Like a Geo, the Geto Boys' lone single for 2 consecutive long players, was the perfect start to an album like Grip It because it introduced the uncompromising artistic and lyrical stance of the Geto Boys. But on the Geto Boys LP, which has an opener like F*** 'em that doubles as an update on the group and a response to the criticism they had endured within the past 2 years, its GB counterpart feels out of place. Its contextual inclusion, though, makes more sense when listened to as the first song on side B on cassette tape or vinyl. Sonically, there's barely any difference between the 2 versions. And finally, there's the unpardonable sin of cleaning up Jay Prince's dialogue with the fictional predatory white record executive. Give us I Ain't to be f***ed with over I Ain't to be played with any day of human existence. The next 2 songs are Willie D solo cuts, which of course can be figurative. For instance, Talking Loud Ain't Saying Nothing is actually not a solo Willie D cut. The OG version has Bill and Scarface starting the show, with Willie D serving the 2 rear verses. However, it's Willie D's unavoidable vocal presence and performance that's enough to claim it as his. The GB version is edited to replace Scarface's verse with the group's reaction to the waves of denunciation they had received around the troubled gestation period of the Geto Boys LP. Read These Nikes, which immediately precedes the song, gets a slight sonic update, and not much else. Either way, they're both improvements over the OG versions. By this point, the MC, formerly known as Action, had graduated into embodying Scarface, even mimicking Tony Montana on the eponymous track.
And you remember I thought I was gonna make a comeback, man. I'm gonna tell you something, man. I'm coming back, man. Geto Boy.
Befittingly, Scarface, the song, mirrors Brad Jordan's real-life immersion in the streets, and the GB version is bolstered by the addition of the aforementioned vocals and a more forceful instrumental thanks to the mixing prowess of Rubin and O'Brien. Who really needs that Cuban guy from Miami?
Why, you stupid
Let a hoe be a hoe. A solo Willie D cut through and through is enhanced by the boom amplified on some of the impeach the president kicks, and thankfully, Willie's hilarious outtakes on irredeemable fun-loving women remain intact. The Geto Boys album ends the way it begins, with a brand new track, City Under Siege. The city in question is the group's homeland of Houston, blighted by internal forces that can't be trusted. Racist cops, negligent parents, unworthy teachers, and unreliable drug delivery workers. On a larger scale, the Geto Boys charged the US federal government under Ronald Reagan as complicit in fueling political instability and conflict between nations across the world, including Nicaragua under the Sandinistas and Panama under Manuel Noriega, by engaging in drug and arms trafficking to fund war efforts to their benefit, rather than the stated intent of ending terrorism. Similar to Do It Like a Geo, City Under Siege is a scattershot affair, and is mainly held together by a kinetic sampling of Myra Barnes's The Message from the Soul Sisters. But hey, in the worldview of the Geto Boys, they are merely interpreting their reality through art. They are artists and commentators, not activists or political experts.
It will take patience and understanding. It will take continued resistance to those who commit terrorist acts, and it will take cooperation with all who seek to rid the world of this scourge. Thank you, and God bless you.
While Rick Rubin struggled to get the Geto Boys album a distribution deal during the summer of 1990, the Recording Industry Association of America, or RIAA, and the Parents Music Resource Center, or PMRC, agreed on a label that would appear on the lower right-hand corner of albums to denote lyrics deemed objectionable. The Two Live Crew were the first rap acts to receive the infamous black and white rectangle, nicknamed the Tipper Sticker after the PMRC co-founder Tipper Gore, on the Band in the USA album, a reissued version of group leader Luther Campbell's debut solo effort. Subsequent summer records by other artists such as NWA and Coogee Rap and DJ Polo also got the Tipper Sticker treatment. The Geto Boys would be no exception, although their offering stood out from its Tipper Sticker predecessors in one aspect. A second label sits next to the parental advisory one, revealing the conflicting stances between Deaf American and its distributor, WEA, the former against censorship, the latter denouncing the album's content. WEA didn't even have a logo in sight. The attitude of the Geto Boys distribution network, seen as measured support at best, mirrored the record's reviews. Sure, the professional critics praised the music as edgy, but ultimately they deemed it over the top. Even the Source magazine, which had awarded Grip It a 4 out of 5 rating, ranked the Redux a slightly lower 3.5, struggling to see any consequential improvements to an already beloved LP, and even argued that the new project was an inferior update. And then it got worse. In the early hours of April 16, 1991, 5 teenagers were driving back from a party in Dodge City, Kansas, buzzing from malt liquor and weed, when they came across a pedestrian by the name of Bruce Romans. One of the kids proclaimed that he was going to cap that dude in the head, and when the car came to a stop, said youth, Christopher Martinez, got out and did precisely just that, with a .22 caliber rifle. His defense in court? He was temporarily hypnotized by one of the songs from a tape being played in the car to say what he said and do what he did. The name of the song? Mind of a Lunatic. The album? The Geto Boys.
The sight of blood excites me. Shoot you in the head. Sit down and watch you bleed to death.
Criticism of the Geto Boys was now at an all-time high, and even an anti-censorship stalwart like Rick Rubin could no longer defend his current favorite rap act. Bad enough that he had to scramble for a new distribution when his deal with Geffen fell through. Bad enough that he had to weather the flurry of condemnation from senators, special interest groups, churches, the PMRC, and even some industry folks. Bad enough that he had to deal with venues refusing to book the group, and the few record stores that agreed to stock the new album kept the copies behind the counter. Bad enough that the album peaked at number 171 on the Billboard 200. Decent, but not a blockbuster type achievement when contemporaries like NWA, Ice Cube, Ice-T, and the 2 Live Crew were at least going gold or platinum. Now they had to deal with being associated with a murder case, an association that was unprecedented in recorded rap history. The return on investment, or lack thereof, could no longer justify Rubin's support. Deaf American, quietly, severed ties with Rap-A-Lot and the Geto Boys. If the commercial performance and contemporaneous evaluation of the Geto Boys LP didn't quite meet the expectation of all parties involved, there's some solace in the product, words J. Prince, garnering value with the passage of time. Granted, Grip It on that other level will always be a sentimental favorite of hip-hop fans with its raw presentation of violence, misogyny, and overall ghetto life ensconced in unvarnished beats, as well as expert sequencing. But the Geto Boys album is superior in its overall mixing and engineering, with the group benefiting from an actual recording studio with state-of-the-art equipment, as well as Rubin amplifying their strengths and minimizing their shortcomings. Grip It and the Geto Boys sharing most of their songs and standing as the group's best work up to that point grandly complement each other, and the latter in particular extends the promise of a brighter future where the members continue to grow in their artistry and camaraderie. But that future had to happen quickly. 2 of the members were initially signed to Rap-A-Lot as solo acts. Willie D had already released his debut, but he was growing dissatisfied with his finances, his role within the group, and how his solo recording career was turning out. Scarface was also worried about his finances, but he seems to be more worried about his solo career, since he was yet to have his album out. So, the big question, unbeknownst to the outside world, wasn't whether there would be a follow-up to the Geto Boys. Rather, it was whether there would even be a group to deliver one. Thanks for watching. For those new here, welcome to Rap Perspective. For the Rappleheads, I greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget to like, comment on, and share this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. And I encourage everyone to watch, like, comment on, and share other videos on here. See you in the next video.